All right, guys, we are almost done with this side. I started here, started working that way, and when I started this, I knew that was going to be an easy one, the little combination lock, but I deliberately avoided him because I mistakenly thought that he was some kind of lever lock, really old. So let's get to where I'm going to leave this guy for last, by the way, because he's holding the bank bag full of what I believe are the keys on there. I want to keep it all together. And let's take a look at this little guy. He is absolutely not a lever lock. When I looked inside of here, I actually saw some warding. So it's a pretty old warded lock made by Miller Company. I've never heard of them. It's kind of an obscure one, at least to me. These guys are usually pretty easy to get into. If it is truly a warded lock, then all we've got to do is take one of these bypass keys, these skeleton keys, and one of those will probably open it up. And the way this works, inside of there are little walls, little wards that restrict a key's movement in there. And there, between one of those walls, or perhaps two of those walls, are one or two actuators that have to be rotated. These keys bypass all the warding and it lets you get in there. But you don't run into these very often. I mean, very infrequently in the field you find these guys. So you may not want to spend $20 on a set of these. So there are other ways that you could get into these old warded locks, particularly one like this. So let's take a little closer look at this guy. First of all, on the bottom here, you can see little cutouts. And that tells you that on both sides, there's a locking pawl somewhere in the mechanism here that digs into these locking lugs. And they're spring-loaded so that when you slide the body on there, you go click, click, click as it moves up and those pawls fit into these grooves. Now, right away, I can tell you the Lock Picking Lebowski did not do us any favor. I mean, the dude shoved this up literally as far as it would go. Now, if we know there are spring-loaded pawls in there, a logical attack is to bypass those by putting a shim inside of here. If we had room, if the dude hadn't shoved this all the way up, say if it was on one of these lower pawls, we could take a shim, slide it down that side, another one down this side, and that would fit between the shackle and the locking pawl, pushing the pawl out of position, and then we'd be able to slide this lock off. So the dude screwed us. That's all I can say. We're hosed here. We can't use that particular attack. But again, if we look at this, we know it is spring-loaded locking pawls. There's another attack that we could use that, I'll admit, on a double-sided lock like this one, it's a low probability, but I have successfully used it before. It works great on single-sided locks, and I'll show you what it is. You're going to need a hammer. Now, this one has a nylon side, so I'm not going to do any damage to the lock here. What you do, you pull down very gently on the lock body, and then when you hit it, ideally, it will spring, the energy from the hammer will transfer from the shackle, bounce the spring-loaded locking pawl back into the body. Now, the problem with this is we have opposing locking pawls. So again, low probability on a double-sided. This locking pawl is pushing in that direction, and this locking pawl is pushing in that direction. So if I hit it on this side, that's the correct way to uncouple this one, but that's the wrong direction to uncouple that one. It's actually going to be pushing that further into the locking. But who knows? It might work. I have had it happen that it does work before. All right, let's go ahead and put very gentle downward tension. Don't put too much downward tension or those pawls won't be able to move. Just very gentle so that when you strike it, perhaps they'll bounce out of position, decouple, and we can drop it down one notch. And we'll just keep doing that until it comes off. So let's try it. Very gentle. I'm going to strike it here on the shackle. That's usually pretty successful, at least until it disappears into the body. All right, probably not going to work. Now notice I changed the strength of the strikes and also the frequency. And again, it's just you're trying to vary that. If something doesn't work, try something different. In this case, I try it at all. Fast, soft hits, very large, strong hits, and I got nothing. It didn't decouple at all. So it's not working. We're going to have to try something else. All right, how do these work? Inside of here are little walls that separate each of these different chambers, and between one or more of those chambers is the locking pawl lever that we need to activate. If we were going to use this guy, one of them, perhaps two of them, would be able to open this lock. But I don't want to spend $20. I'm only going to find one of these probably in my whole career. Why not go ahead and make a lock for this thing? And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a lock out of this pick. This is a broken, I think it was a wave rake that I was a little over vigorous with. But when I take a look at it, this is the perfect material. It's made out of stainless steel. It's the right thickness, really tough. I'm not going to use that end. I'll use this end. And what I want to do is be able to slide him into the keyway. Now, he's a little bit wide. So let's go, the first thing we're going to do is thin this guy down just a little bit until it slides into the keyway. So let me go to the grinder and take care of that. All right, didn't take a heck of a lot off of there. It slides in now perfectly. Now, if there were no warding inside of this lock, I would be able to turn it, and that entire shaft would turn the actuator, and we would be in. Unfortunately, those little walls in there prevent us from turning it. So what I want to do is basically take off everything and turn this into a T, so that we have the T on the end, and then the shaft narrowed in the middle to bypass all of those wards. How thick do you make it? Well, no wider than the width of that keyway. So let's go ahead and thin this down and see if we can turn it into a key. All right, guys, after about 5 minutes on the grinder and maybe a couple of seconds with a sandpaper to take the sharp edges off, this is kind of what you're looking for. A little T-shaped tool where that white part is going to trigger the actuator. This should be just wide enough to fit inside of the keyway, just like that. And the shaft should be no wider than the widest part of that keyway. So what we're going to do is just slide it in the keyway, and you don't know where they've put that spring-loaded actuator. So just give it a little turn and try to find the first chamber, and it'll turn when you find that first one. And if you feel no spring-loaded resistance, that tells you that's not where the activator is. Just straighten it back up, push it down to the next chamber, give it another turn, no actuator. Keep moving down the stack until you find it. That's chamber 3. No actuator. And I think we're in chamber 4. Now I'm starting to feel a little resistance. So at that point, you can feel that it's spring-loaded. Now what you want to do is just turn it and at the same time pull down on the lock body. And that is how you beat pretty much any warded lock. Anyway, guys, I appreciate your time. Stay safe. Stay legal.